we should probably use the mic just to make sure it gets recorded properly. Yeah. It seems odd that we would do that, but if we
have to go through all our stories again.
we've already done that. But anyway, Gail has had a chance now to be working with the department for
It'll be 2 years.
yeah, it'll be 2 years, and at least 6 months of that was training and all kinds of things. So I'm glad she's here, and
Glad to be here.
we haven't had a lot of incidences. I think if you were here at the meeting last night, or no, a couple nights ago, the commander did mention, of course, that one incident that was very sad for the community and for Port Orchard Police, but that, you know, the other one up at top of Mile Hill. So we've been blessed and very lucky for not having a lot of incidents like that. But one of the things I wanted to tell everybody too is the newsletter we have, the police chief wrote a lot of good information in it, and one of it is about the fact that there's a lot of crossover between Kitsap County and Port Orchard in the newspaper. A lot of times they just lump us all together, and it happened in Kitsap County, or they say it's in Port Orchard when it's, you know, unincorporated. So a lot of times I think, as far as any of us have anything to do with it, we need to be careful that we do explain there is a difference between unincorporated South Kitsap and Port Orchard. But, you know.
Cairo Channel 7 yesterday was talking about the Gig Harbor politician was suggesting that we get a couple more of the mothballed aircraft carriers to put across as a bridge.
But they called
said
it
they called it having a bridge
emergency.
from Sinclair Inlet to Port Angeles. Twice.
with
We-
commercials.
Yeah.
Use up all of our available carriers.
Yeah.
You'd have to keep them under power.
Yeah, the lady misread it twice, and finally by the third broadcast, she got it corrected to
Well,
Port
Steve
Orchard.
Rabel came
Yeah,
on then,
yeah.
That's always a problem. It really always is, because it's just easy to lump it. If you're not sure, have it in Port Orchard. 8 out of 10 people I talk to say, I live in Port Orchard. And then I question them and say, exactly where? Well, just in Manchester, actually. And I'm going, okay, that's not exactly Port Orchard, but it's close enough.
If we're like down south talking to somebody for what we say, well, we live near Seattle.
That's usually, you're safe if you say, you know, as the crow flies, about 12 miles from Seattle, but it takes you about an hour if you drive around, you know.
Say ferry right away.
Yeah, yeah. So,
So good meeting last night.
yes, yes, the meeting we were talking about is it was a joint meeting with the Port Orchard Planning Commission and the City Council, and a lot of citizens that I hadn't heard from before, which was really cool. And I think they're going to come back next Thursday, I hope. And you know what? Just between you and I and the fence post, we're going to try to set this up. Nick and I are, so that everybody gets included in that, because it's not just about the 14 or, you know, the 7 council and the planning commission, but it's about everybody else too, by the way. And hopefully will kind of set a trend to take testimony from everyone.
Is this thing you're working on, is it a state mandate or a federal?
It's a Growth Management Act mandate from 20-some years ago. And of course, I always tell people the Growth Management Act gets blamed for lots of stuff. And it's earned a lot of that blame, but it hasn't earned it all. There's some pretty good parts about the Growth Management Act. But unfortunately, over the years, it's morphed and been blamed for a lot of things that it never intended. It was an unintended consequence of the Growth Management Act, but everybody goes, we have to do it because the Growth Management Act tells us we have to do it, you know, so.
Is that a state?
That is a state, yeah.
It seemed to be,
Let me get this on this. It's not
Yeah, I know.
Get your requirement.
It seems to me that they are making work for themselves. The government is requiring more regulations that cause more expenses to government and hiring more people and more paperwork. And I'm hoping it's all important work and not just make work.
I agree that some of it looks duplicated.
It looks like a lot of work
It's like it's
from what,
duplicating the same thing over and over again. You know, when we pay for reports and scientific help, too often it seems like. I mean, we do it once and then pretty soon, like less than 4 years, we have to do it again. And meanwhile, nothing is really accomplished on the street, so to speak. You know, I mean, it's all done on paper. And
what does government produce? Not much. Yeah.
Well, large government.
it's, you know, I feel that too, and I don't know exactly how we get our arms around it, but we need to ask that question, and we need to, to the degree I can, I'm going to say, okay, time out now, we've done this, now we have a new, you know, a new plan. Let's not go back and revisit it every couple of years and pay all these fees.
It's gotta cost a lot of money. It's unfunded mandates like the schools have to deal with.
And one of the things that scares me is this best available science. You've heard of that?
Yes.
That is a potpourri. I mean, you know, you can, debate teams could spend the rest of their lives on that subject. What is it? You know, I mean, it just depends on which scientists you have there and what they would like to believe to be the best.
Research says, well, whose research? When was it done?
Bingo.
By how many? What's their background? What's their pedigree?
And who are they working for?
Who are they
Also,
working for?
having so much that they're working for a company that it benefits that company. You really delve into it. It's not independent.
Make that, speak into the mic and tell me that again, because that was a good
Well,
point.
it was just, when you read a lot of research and people start questioning, you come to find out that the researchers have been paid by a company that it benefits. So yes, it's their research, but it's kind of cantered to the company so that they will get the benefit from the research. It's kind of something that I'm, even with what's happening with, and I like what the University of Washington did, but I feel like that the comprehensive plan is almost a can program that's coming out of either universities or, you know, and they're saying that this is the best way to be doing it, like these little communities, you know, little centers. That's a new concept, and I'm just wondering, has it been tried other places, and is it really working? Like, I remember when the company that made a little town south of Tacoma, it was a computer company, and they wanted all of their employees to be able to walk to work, and it was I think a fancy chip, but I don't know enough about it. But I'm just wondering, did that really work? I think the company has moved on, is no longer there. I want to say like Duval or some, I mean, it starts with a D, you know, and they built this little town and everybody was to live there and work there, and DuPont, maybe that's, yeah.
Yes, I think it was.
And, you know, I'm having the same feeling with having this concept with these little walking areas. It sounds beautiful, but I'm just wondering if it really will ever come about. And it's like things that happened in the school district. You know, things that had started someplace else and everybody said, oh, we should embrace it. They'd already moved on where they had been started because it didn't work. You know, but then other people are pushing it here because we got to it later on. And so I'm just questioning all these little centers, and you don't get money if you don't build that into your plan. But it bothers me that the money issue and how hard it is to get, we're paying our taxes and they're getting higher every year, but I think so much is being spent also, here I'm hitting another pet peeve. I'm not so sure that, I think the idea is good, but another, in fact, 2 levels of government have been added with the KRCC and the PSRC, and they have to be funded, and so tax money is going to fund them, and so here we have 2 more levels of government, whereas if the money just came to the small communities and didn't have to go to all of these, through all these steps, more money could be spent on what the people want it to be spent on.
What do you think? You think?
Making jobs for
We're back to that last comment that every several years, we have to do the same science or the same reports, water quality report or whatever, again and again. It is. You might have brought that up at one point or another. The point about how many times do we pay for this?
When you spoke at maybe
I say so much, I don't know what I say.
It basically was about, I think it was the woman that is supposed to be
Oh, studies,
the gap,
yeah,
some sort of the gap
yeah,
analysis.
it was about, I had a concern with the quality of the study that we were getting. If you give an outside entity bogus information, or not bogus, that's the wrong term. If you give them too much information and it steers them in a direction and you lose the science of the study. If you give them a shopping list of 50 projects that the city has, their only assumption is that the city wants to do these 50 projects. If the city has to do them if the city is doing a 6-year plan, you've got 50 projects to get done in 6 years. So that's what it's going to cost. But all those are not going to be done. So give them the 3 projects or 4 projects that are at the top of your list, a prioritized list, and the science that you get from their knowledge is going to be useful and valuable. But with a grocery list, it's bogus information. You get inflated numbers, and there's no science. You lose the science when you add the quantity of stuff. I mean, we can't afford every road project that we've got in the city, or to replace every foot of sewer pipe in the city. And then part of that, it's coming back now. Oh no, I hope I don't start frothing.
Frothing's good.
Well, we'll change
The,
these then.
yeah, I'll try to keep it splattering this way. Yeah, well, frothing passion. It's not rabies, I've had the shots. The utility committee made a list of things that needed to be done that raised our water rates in 2011. Going through that process, we were supposed to have 3, it was supposed to go up there were supposed to be 3 increases. We're now on our 4th increase based on that, because it looks like the words may have gotten changed between what we heard and what went into the municipal code. So we're on our 4th raise this year instead of 3 that was originally voted on. And now, with the Isaacson report, they've added those projects back in to the work that they gave her to study for us. They amortized it over the utility committee amortized it over 20 years. She's amortizing it over fewer years with dropping a couple of the projects. But anyway, we're paying again because of the way they amortized it. It's, you know, it's not all clear in my head from the explanations that I received. But it just, it was an internal gap analysis, and now they get a do-over. Those were the words that I heard. Now, there was words in the middle of that, so, and I don't remember them because they weren't glued into my brain like the do-over and the, so, yeah. Did any of that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, that brought up something that reminded me, the last 2 times that they've wanted to raise our water bill, I've taken the time to go through and on their chart and figure out how much 1,000 gallons cost each of us in our, in our category. And I made the chart on an Excel spreadsheet and I brought it in. And I think that's one of the things that really has bothered me over time is when somebody from the audience brings something in, it's like we don't have any knowledge, aren't smart enough, and they may accept the paperwork, but nobody really pays it any attention. Now this Katie Isaacson has come in and said, you're not charging the big users enough, or people that use more enough. And that's what I've said for the last 2 raises in the water bill, that the people at the bottom are actually paying close to $5 a 1,000 gallons, whereas the people that are using hundreds of thousands of gallons are paying like $2.63 for 1,000 gallons. But I was told that I didn't know what I was talking about. Now, she said it at that presentation, and I've heard that it was discussed at the utilities, or that, it's something that they need to be looking at. But even though, when it was presented by a person from the audience, see, that's another thing. I think there are some smart people out here, and I don't know how we get them to start coming to things like this. But there's a lot of knowledge out amongst our community, and to get them involved, and not to do all of the heavy work, but there are ideas, there's creative solutions, it's just there if people are willing to listen. Not be dismissed by that.
I believe there's a utility subcommittee tomorrow morning.
I know, I just have a hard time getting up early.
And she's supposed to be presenting something tomorrow. I don't know what exactly.
Yeah.
It has to be at a restaurant.
We're paying a premium for one of the smartest people for utility rates to come and present to the city. We're paying a high premium for one of the smartest utility rate people in the state to come and present her findings to the utility committee at Pancake House,
How insulting.
Yeah.
where this time maybe somebody will lift their eyes up from their breakfast to pay attention to what she's got to say. The last time, they were so focused on their breakfast and the music that was playing in the background that it was somewhat embarrassing, and then I think she might have been somewhat offended when she had to buy her own breakfast. But that's my editorial opinion, and
Yeah,
that's all.
I think it's a poor image for,
Totally poor.
very poor image.
Unprofessional.
Huh? Oh, no, I was just saying that, I think it's just it paints a very poor picture of Port Orchard. Oh, really podunk, they're gonna sit there and eat the breakfast and they're,
Small
and,
town.
so they got a big raise. Does So they get, the people who don't, the council members who don't go and eat breakfast every month, they're actually getting less pay than the people who go and have breakfast, right? Because that doesn't come out of their salary. I know you pay for your own breakfast. You always pay for your own things, but council members who go for breakfast and eat, that's in addition to the pay they're getting. Okay. I appreciate your paying your own breakfast.
Would that be pork belly?
So with a working lunch, how much work really gets done? This is a working breakfast. Coffee for the eye openers. No one's paying attention. They're hungry. How absurd to carry on city business over breakfast.
On a routine basis.
Speaker has to be their own way,
I guess another thing that, when they started about the water and the sewers and that, the man that spoke last night about the ULID that's being kind of pushed because there's a big piece of property that wants to develop off of Phillips Road. And he said that if they, first of all, I guess I would like an explanation from the sewer company as to why they're pushing for the water main to go out that way when what I've heard, and maybe I don't have the information right, that these people have not paid their taxes on the land for 3 years, so that they're not responsible. So all those other people there will be held accountable for that price, and then when it really comes back is what he said true? It could come back on us to pay that $7 million if they default and don't pay it?
Haven't vetted any of that testimony, but I was curious, like you, if that was true, if that was just his perception.
Well, that's,
I
I
don't
guess
know
that's
for
why I would like to hear from that man. You know, what happens if the major piece of property that wants it, if they don't follow through, then, and they haven't been paying their taxes, are they going to pay their, I mean, what guarantees are there, you know, and protection for the rest of us on something like that? I know it was a big deal for me, and you know, to come up with, I think it was $1,000, wasn't it, when we put the plant in and we each had to pay on our, it was at least,
Years and years ago.
yeah, it was probably 20, 25 years ago that we were assessed. I mean, as a young person having a home, that was, you know, oh, now I have $1,000 to pay for this. And just imagine with the $7 million that they're, for just a small, I mean, I don't know how far out Phillips Road it's going, but that doesn't help me.
Is there a developer who's pushing this so that it gets put in before he puts his buildings in?
There's 3 of them.
Oh, so this is paving the way.
3 of them, 2 of them are 3 years in arrears on their property taxes, and 1 of them lives in California.
And is it the water district that is being coaxed into doing this?
West Sound Utility District is being asked to do it.
How big an area does West Sound cover then?
We have about half, it's a partnership. West Sound Water Reclamation Facility is 50/50 owned between the city of Port Orchard and West Sound. And we're just about 50/50 in other regards too. As far as sewer hookups, we have about the same. The city has about the same number as West Sound. And so that makes it a really nice, managed partnership, a 50/50 partnership. Now, in defense of West Sound Partnership, it's a pretty great partnership because the city gets to take advantage of a lot of cost savings that they're pretty good at what they do, and that's run the water reclamation facility there and the sewer plant for laymen. And so it's a great partnership, and I don't know if you guys had heard when Mr. Wilson came here, and he's the president of the West Sound Utility Company, and he was explaining how he saved us, about $66,000 in 1 year in the way we now pay for liability insurance for the plant and stuff. So, I mean, it's savings like that that I'm really encouraged with. Now, the other things that we're talking about here, I don't have a lot of knowledge about that annexation out there. It's still in the county. It's in an urban growth area, though, that could someday be part of the city. And it's, something that the utility district wants to do, or AKA some property owners want, and there's a lot of them that don't want it. I'm not sure that that's a given, that it's going to happen. The way that one man, he talked as if it was already done, it was a done deal, it was going to happen. I don't think it is yet, but I don't know that either. I think there's a whole process that they have to go through.
Things that could go wrong, it's kind of scary, a lot of big numbers involved. They're not elected officials too, I presume.
Can you explain what ULID means, utility local improvement district? And what does one of those do?
That funds whatever project it is. Now, in this particular case, it was a sewer, extension of the sewer line.
So they would be paying, but we wouldn't be paying on that. So it's their ULID, but
What happens
if it
defaults?
if it defaults, then we're 50/50. So we could have a $3.5 million or whatever it costs.
So basically, we're co-signing on a loan that we have, that we know the partners.
I wouldn't put it that
No,
way.
not that. I don't know. You don't pay your previous bill, so.
Our partner is entering into it.
Okay. People don't pay their bills.
But that's a point well taken. You can assess people for things. You can't make them pay. And if they don't pay, it depends on what attachment you have to them. If it's property tax, it takes 3 years, and then you can start to repossess, or you can start to, sell the property for taxes. But in the case of a utility, they still have to pay for that extension, whether the property owners all come up with the money or they don't. It still has to be paid for. So, and I'm not sure. It's kind of hard to argue just one side of a story, because you don't know it all, and it would be fair to have West Sound in the same room say, no, that's not quite right, and you could have them both tell their side of the story. So I know that I'm pretty impressed with the management of West Sound, the management of what we are partners with. And we've worked a new management agreement that goes into the future for another 20 years. And it's been about 3 years in the process of working that new agreement out. And I truly don't think the city could do any better if they tried to go it alone, or take the plant back, or for some kind of a combination said, we're going to be the operators. I guarantee that would be a bad, probably a bad investment on the city's time. We just looked and looked and looked and took it apart every way we could, and we couldn't see a lot of benefit to the city being the operating partner in that. So, but it would be interesting. We're hearing a lot of rhetoric. I'd love to see the two of them have a debate. Sit down and do a public, give and take about what is the truth here. I don't know all the things I know about it.
I'd like to know what the facts are. You certainly have some property owners spun up and giving some publicity. It's not all good based on opinions of what may or may not happen. So it'd be nice to get some facts.
Mm-hmm.
Have they had a big meeting with all the people? Oh, okay.
It's my understanding that they're pretty well organized out there, and they have had some of these meetings. Unfortunately, I haven't seen much reported on in the paper.
We have a friend that's out there, and she's got 2.5 acres. And what they did was the utility district kind of preliminarily subdivided her property into the number of, I want to say it's 8 units per acre out there or something like that. Divided it into that, and her share of the ULID was pretty close to what her property value is. I mean, it was almost $100,000, if I remember correctly. So, and that was because she had 22 ISUs on her 2.5 acre parcels that she doesn't intend to divide, nor does she intend to hook up to it. So it's pretty, they need to come up with a better way in order, if they're really going to try and work with property owners, because that way isn't going to work.
I know let's not kick around West Sound or the city or the county, but let's talk about Ocean Shores. That's a good place to start. They did that to us property owners down there. And what they did is they did a ULID for 20 years to improve the sewer system. And we have lots down there that we don't live on, and there's no houses. So we get to pay for improving the sewer system, but we don't use it. And then you pay for that each year for the next 20 years. And you're right. I think there needs to be a state, gets to weigh in on this, and it needs to be a more equitable way, because some folks benefit because they now can hook into a nice new utility. The rest of us that don't hook into it, though, we get to pay for it, and that somehow doesn't quite sit right.
Yeah, you'd think you would pay as you hooked up. Once you said, okay. Well, you think that they'd roll it all in together. Because isn't it with new construction, you have to pay a certain amount for the schools, even though you might not have kids? Impact fees. Thank you, Jerry. So it just makes sense that it's been put in, now I want to hook up to it, now I pay. And yes, it might be a lot more because it's been there the existing sewer's been there for 10 years, and now you want to do your branch.
Yeah, you're right. That makes a lot of sense too. And go ahead and mention the latecomer.
Latecomer agreement.
Yeah, the latecomer agreement. It makes all the sense in the world because, and then sometimes you limit that to 10 years. I don't know why you limit it. Just open-ended. If somebody pays for the bulk of that, and you later come in to hook up, you need to pay your share. So.
Well, it's like paying for the fire department. You may never use it, but you pay into it, and other people come and they have use of it. So everybody pays, and yeah, it's just one of those, yeah.
Oh, I argued, I had a rental that was on a septic system, and of course I was paying water and sewer all those years, and I at some point protested slightly about having to pay these sewer bills, and anyway, the argument was, well, you benefit by having your property in a town that has a sewer system. I thought I should at least have some relief when I'm not hooked up to it. So anyway, I sold it.
I think that's one of the things over the past few years that I've questioned ERUs. They are putting a burden on a lot of people when, if you go by consumption, at least on the water, to me, that's a better form of people paying for what they're using. But we don't have anybody here that's willing to go in that they want to use the ERUs. And I cite my neighbor who has 3 rentals, but he's very cautious as to who he rents to. He doesn't provide washer or dryers on the premises, so all of the water that they need to wash their clothes, he only rents to people that are working full-time, so they are out of the apartments at least, 8-hour plus a day. And because they're out, the amount of water that they're using is minimal, but he's paying $450 on his water bill because he has 3 ERUs in a place that's using very little water. And the same thing with a bed and breakfast that we all know about. They actually use less water. They checked on the records than every council person except for one person, and but they were paying for 7 or 8 ERUs, I'm not sure, and actually using a lot less water than some of the people that have teenagers and families of 4 or more, and only have to pay for 1 ERU. It's a real unfair system, especially when it's something here again that's, in my mind, archaic. It was something that was started a century ago, and instead of updating, it's the thing that everything is based on. And it's not right, because there are a lot of people getting water for a lot less, and people that are using very little and paying a heck of a lot more.
You look like you have a comment, just waiting to, no? I mean, well, and
Well, it's just that, if you have a flat fee and then you add on as you use more, because our meters are being read, you think it would be a hookup fee of $5 a month. And now, okay, you've used 250 gallons this month, this is what you pay. You used 5,000 gallons this month, this is what you pay. You've paid for the hookup, which is the maintenance of the meter and the pipe out to the main, but the rest of it, it would foster not using stuff. It would, you would be, look at your garbage. You get 2 different size garbage cans. And then you can add recycling, or you have to have recycling, but then you can do yard waste. Now, that's because you're using those, you have to pay for them. If you're not using the water, you shouldn't have to pay for it. Because what I think it's going to push is people going like, I'm paying all this, why don't I just waste it? There is no reason to, save.
I'll pay less if I use more.
Well, wasn't it Councilman Geiger said that they used to lower the water rate in the summer so people would water their lawns so Port Orchard would look nice and green? I don't know why they stopped that, but that was just, we're going to make it a livable city, and we're going to lower your water rates because we want you to make the thing nice, rather than you going like, oh, I'm not going to water this because it's going to cost me more. So, anyway.
So it sounds like most everybody here's more favorable to pay for what you use, and that's all.
Right, that's why we have bridge fares instead of going across the bridge for free. But, well, you're using it, you've got to pay it. That's why our gasoline prices, my car takes more than yours, so I've got to pay it. But then I come into the city and I've got to pay more than a company that's using thousands of gallons more than me? That doesn't make sense. At least, not in my world.
I also have 3 little rentals, 1-bedroom rentals, and their water consumption is less than just the 2 of us with no kids or anything. But I have to pay 3, and it's on 1 meter, but I still have to pay 3 ERUs, yeah. And it's not cheap. Anyway, I hate to raise the rent like everybody says I should, but these are, people have been long-term renters and pretty low income, so, but I don't get subsidized. But anyway, I just think it should be based on consumption.
The decision apparently is being talked about tomorrow, I mean, one of them, and we'll be hearing from that gal again. And it sounds to me like there's a pretty strong contingency here that would love to see us get rid of the ERU, at least, for the most part, except that I agree with you, there have to be a stock, 1 unit cost, and that's for the meter, for the readers, for the utility, or for the lines, and then so much per gallon or so much per.
Phones, I don't know if they still do, but they still have an access line fee, and then you would pay for long distance call and other services on top of it. I mean, it makes sense to have a lot of access fees, so to speak.
Why have readers if everyone's going to be charged? With no reference to gallons used.
They have steps, like I'm at the 3,000 step, and then the next is 3,000 to 5,000. Then I think it jumps from 5 to 10,000. And then, so there's different
So
steps.
it's kind of a tiered, yeah.
It's a tiered
It's
up
very
to,
complicated.
up to 250,000 gallons, I think.
I have a question. I'm not really up on all this sort of thing. I don't own any property or anything, but isn't technology nowadays to the point where you could bill instead of, you said that there's a step like between 3 and 5, and it seems like a long time ago it was harder to get into the nitty-gritty of how much people were really using. Is it still that way? It's hard to tell between 2,500 and 3,000 usage, or can you actually tell, oh, they used 2,563? So if we can see that, it's kind of like, I put gas in my car. I understand that if I put 11 gallons of gas in my car, I got to pay for 11 gallons of gas, not, well, if you put between 11 and 15 gallons, you got to pay this much. But if you put 16 gallons, and you got to pay the 16 to 20 price, I'm like, really? I don't know. Just a question. I'm kind of young, don't really know everything.
The meters are that good. They could tell you how many gallons go through the meter, so.
So my question is, if the meter can tell us these things, why can't we charge according to what the meter's saying?
Because they're running on a system that was developed, I would say at least 100 years ago, where they talked about ERUs. And so you're caught between an old system and making the step to the next jump. And it was even said when I said use what goes in, and then that would also help on if you take in 5,000 gallons, then what you're putting in the sewer system would be maybe, say, 60% of that, because if you're watering your lawn and using some that's actually going in to the environment versus going down the sewer system, they'd have a better, but I was told that the people of Bremerton are very unhappy being charged by the gallon, so.
Oh, we're not Bremerton.
Well, then my next question is, are we charging the way we're charging because that's the way we've always done it? Or are we charging the way that we're charging because that's the smartest way to do it? And then my next question after that is, have we even looked at that, or what it would take to change the way of charging?
How about this? We know how many gallons we use each month, and we know how much money we've taken in. We can do a little division, and it might work out that you'll be paying 28 cents per 10 gallons or something. And then you can just go back to the meter and say this, this, this. That way, if someone who is using 100,000 gallons a month, he'll be paying the same per gallon charge as someone using 100 gallons a month. We still got the same amount of income, but once we've established the per gallon or per 100 gallon or per 1,000 gallon rate, then if someone uses more, they'll pay more, and to me, it'll spawn or spurn or whatever the word is to make people want to conserve, because they can then use the money for other things.
I basically think that these utility districts and water departments are in charge of making as much money as they can justify. Let's face it, they want to be able to do improvement projects, and that's how these ERUs are the basis for that too, is a way to justify, well, you have 3 independent family units there.
One person.
Yeah, even though there's one person, one unit, it's just a way to justify making or increasing income. One other thing bothers me is we don't have a water shortage here yet, but down in California, they're being ordered for 25% reduction in some cities across the board. What does that say for the people that are already not conserving it? It's sort of a slap in the face to them. I'm sure there's some upset people. Hope we don't run out of water.
So then my next question is, what is keeping the people from, no, my next question is, what would it encourage or force or whatever verb you want to use, the people who are making the charges the way they're making them now to change to a more equitable system or whatever you want to call it? It seems like the system that's being used now doesn't seem too equitable, or was good many years ago, but was necessary many years ago, but is not necessary now because of our technology, the way we can count down to the gallon who's using what. So what's keeping them from switching from the tried and true system we've always used to a system that is most equitable?
I just think they like it that way.
Like that senator from Massachusetts said, it's rigged against us. The businesses are getting the better rate because that's the way it is. And the small person usually just pays the bill and keeps their nose to the grindstone. So the businesses aren't going to say, oh yeah, raise mine to be more equitable. It's the citizens have to stand up to it. And then you need a council that actually wants to listen to your input.
I was going to say, like, apartments aren't charged the same. Well, I was thinking that was more on the, when they're figuring how many trips from your house that you make every day to charge you for the taxes on the roads. We're being charged for something like 10 to 15 trips from our house a day, but people that live in apartments are only charged 4 or 5 trips a day per unit. And it's because supposedly they don't either have as many children as regular households do. I mean, there was a list of reasons why. But to me, you know, they don't pan out for my life. You know, that car sits in that driveway most of the week, and it takes some dynamite for me to get it out, other than to come down here. You know, it just doesn't move. But for the way we're charged for our taxes on the roads, I would be charged about I think it was 15 trips for a regular home on using, when they calculate however you're charged for.
No, this is transportation impact fee calculation, I think.
They're getting, yeah.
Well,
when
there,
they get
there's,
the impact fees.
yeah, the great debate is with the council right now is whether whether we're going to initiate transportation impact fees across the board and across the city. McCormick's always had transportation impact fees ever since it was county project. And so when they built anything out at McCormick, there was an impact fee that was collected.
Isn't one of the things that we're going to do to walk downtown? Downtown people,
Right. But let me be the advocate on both sides here. One of the reasons for impact fees are so that we can build capital infrastructure, because we're falling apart. We're literally, everybody that testifies here about roads says the roads are falling apart. If I've heard one, I've heard 100 comments about Bethel, losing Volkswagens on Bethel and Salmonberry. And, you know, I don't think we've lost any Volkswagens, but I know some of them disappeared. All you can see is the top. So, but what I'm saying, though, is in government and cities everywhere are struggling to figure out, okay, how do we pay for infrastructure improvements? And the great debate will go on and on long after I'm gone and you're gone, probably, is do we get impact fees? And if we do, how much is too much? If you get too high an impact fee, builders won't build, buyers won't buy. Well, all right, yeah, that's true. You know, buyers won't buy, builders won't build, and nothing will get improved. If it's too low, then you get the opposite. Lots of people want to, because there's a better chance to make a profit then if you're a builder, and more people want to buy because the houses are more affordable. So it's a great debate, but okay.
With gas taxes, gasoline taxes.
The problem with that is that always used to be the solution, but two things happened. People decided they were driving too much, and it was costing them too much to pay all this gas tax. And the cars, well, the car folks said, we'll make higher mileage cars, so they got less revenue. And so now they're looking at mileage tax, right.
So I don't know if this question fits in here, but I have a question. Someone said, well, do you walk to Safeway? And I said, yeah, I do. I walk up and across the bridge over to Safeway, and I can walk back. But I don't know how the sidewalks are paid for. I think it'd be great if we could walk up across the bridge there to Bethel and then be able to walk down Bethel to where there are some sidewalks. There's a huge section without sidewalks. It'd be nice to have that loop to be able to go back down to Seattle. Pardon? Well, Hagen, I guess I won't be going to Hagen, but I walk up that way, and I'll go in there and different times I've wanted then to walk down to the post office on my way home, but it's very dangerous. There are no sidewalks to a certain point. So I don't know where sidewalks come from. Where do sidewalks come from? Cement mixer?
If there's a developer somewhere close, they say you need to put sidewalks in. They make it as a requirement. In existing places, it's prioritized along with those Volkswagen-sized holes and stoplights and roads and and resurface grindouts and resurfacing. And sidewalks are pretty expensive. They really.
Talking about having a walkable city, constructing apartment buildings so people can live and walk downtown, they need to have sidewalks for people to walk on. That's a kind of a.
Sidewalks going toward town. And there's plenty of developments I live on Hull Avenue, and Kendall Street runs right down below us, and there were some houses down there, and we needed sidewalks down there, and all the neighbors pitched in, and we paid to have the sidewalks put in. It was that simple.
That's another way a community or a certain area can do an ULID to do that too. They can decide that they want to tax themselves for that improvement.
Some ULIDs, why is it some ULIDs, it's up to the citizens to have it, and others are forced upon them? So I don't get that. You don't have to answer that. It's just a question.
I'm not an expert on that. I'm not sure I can answer it.
Changing the subject, something that I'm really concerned about something that I'm concerned about is the switching the downtown, the overlay district, to 600 square foot units. I really get upset when I'm told that a builder won't make enough money, so he won't build down there, so we need to let him make more units. 30, 40 years ago, you built something knowing that it was going to take you maybe 20 years to pay it off. Now, the big construction companies, they want to come in, build something, and walk away with their profit in that and leave the city with a mess, but they've made all of their money. And I know that one person that was going to redo their business downtown told me that if he charged enough on the condos above his place, he'd get his whole bottom store for free. And that, it's a mindset that's bothering. I know everybody wants to make money, and I appreciate that. But every time we're talking about construction, it's they have to make so much right away, or they're not. It's almost like it's a threat. We either let them build 600 or they're never going to build down here because they won't make enough money. I'd like to make more money, but it's...
When I first moved up here back in 1985, I did handyman work. And at that time, there were petitions in all the lumber yards because there was a contractor and he only wanted to make 20% profit off of every house he built. And the other contractors in Kitsap County had this petition going because they liked making their 40% profit. So when this lady here talks about that they need to have more units so that they can make money, we ought to look into what their profit margin is.
I think you're all pretty reasonable people, I hope. I was, we discussed this issue in the Planning Commission, I don't know, a couple of months ago. And I was in favor of the 600 square foot units because to build bigger units, you don't have, there's no market. There are larger condo units available in this county that have been built for 3 to 5 years that are still brand new, never been lived in. And the only reason that I supported 600 square feet was because there was no change in the height or the parking requirements. Now, if they want to put in 50 600 square foot units without exceeding the height restrictions and providing the necessary parking for those units, knock themselves out. That's great deal for everybody. Had we had to shirk the parking or say they can go higher, there's no way that we can't support that in our downtown core. Our downtown core needs to stay no higher than it is now. We've got these wing things that they talk about. I still haven't figured those out. Down here, headed out of town this way and headed out of town that way. where they could build 5, maybe 6 floors high without affecting anybody's view. And that's what they need to look at if they want to develop. They're still within walking distance of downtown Port Orchard. Bring them in. But we've got to put something in place to allow that to happen. And I think just drawing a line in the sand should be enough. We don't have to change it. We can't change anything that's already in place because people have invested in town with that in mind. But as far as outside of town, I don't see why we can't do all kinds of different things to attract this development if they want to. But parking and height restrictions in our downtown core is important.
That's very important, thank you. Yeah.
You know, that gives me an opportunity to say something I haven't had a chance to say in quite a while, but I have heard some people speak for me. Unfortunately, they're not speaking for me. They're just speaking and saying and attributing me to those words. But somebody was blogging and said that funny, now all of a sudden I want to go 6 stories high downtown. That's never been farther from the truth. In fact, I was on the planning commission when a good friend of ours, all of us know Bill, or I mean, not Bill, Gil, Michael, and he put a big tarp up at the height. We were talking about a maximum height, and there was a great debate back then. And everybody finally agreed that that was the height we needed to subscribe to. And I agree with you. I still think that's just as valid today as it was when we did it then. And it may be, I may be harsh on somebody that wants to develop and make a profit, but so be it. That's the rules we're going to play by until we go through a complete process to change them. And to my knowledge, I don't think the process has even started to make any of those changes. So anyway, that's just my, I'm not for any changes unless we go through a complete process.
Thank you. Is it okay to go into something different? Okay. I have a concern. Okay. I won't talk about the concern about you, John. I, on behalf of some other people, have a concern about walking through the park downtown, the waterfront park, and being stopped and having people panhandle, and not being comfortable walking through the park because of groups of people. So it's a concern. So I'm very positive and supportive of the Coffee Oasis, and I've made dinners for them. But I've noticed, I guess this has started, more and more people are just kind of hanging out down there. And a good friend of ours with her dog, she'd walk the dog every day. She stopped going through the park because groups of people would come over and start panhandling. And then she knows some of the other dog walkers, especially early in the morning, later at night, are avoiding the park altogether. And it's a shame that they have to, because of groups of people there and, approaching them. So I'm just concerned about that. I am concerned.
So am I. And I've just, this has been kind of brewing here the last month or so that I've heard several complaints. Yes, isn't it unfortunate? It is, yeah, but it's unfortunate because Marina Park is the most used area in the city. I don't think bar any other place, and it's the most fun place. If you sit and watch all the young people that go down there and have a lot of fun and giggle and laugh and everything, I don't ever want to see that changed. So we do have to come to grips with whatever we can to see that each user group down there is not put upon by any other user group. And I know our police department has a public police, what did they call it? Yes, and they're working on it, and they have a policing team that goes down there and does that, but we're not there yet. And everybody has to play well together, or else.
Walking by yourself and you're not as big as they are, it's very intimidating.
You bet it's intimidating. And it's important to, and the chief knows, and the chief's working on it, and the chief's had several meetings about it. But we all have to, we're all in this together. We really are, and everybody has to be responsible for their brother or sister, and cooperate. It's the only way it will make it work. And so and as the summer comes on, evenings are longer, and there's more chance for that type of situation to materialize.
This took place in, the dark, late after work at night, and before work in the morning.
Okay, in the shadows, so to speak, and stuff like that. Okay, I heard that it was
8 o'clock at night, but in the winter, it's dark.
right. Yeah.
So thank you for checking on it.
Another subject change, talking about view ordinances. The 3 or 4 story buildings won't ever affect our view, but these 20 and 50 story tall trees are driving me crazy. What is a view ordinance? How can we get some of these trees eliminated or trimmed down, like
The cottonwood?
the cottonwoods and city property? There's a dedicated street that goes down the hill. Is it, I imagine budget constraints maybe prevents the city from cutting those down, but we've lost 40% at least of our view, maybe more, from when we moved in there. And I can see more trees in front of the apartments in front of us that are growing up. They've eliminated the view from at least 2 or at least 3 apartments in those condos below us. It seemed like it'd be nice if we could somehow know how to go about getting some of these trees, even if we have to take up a neighborhood collection to get some of them trimmed down. We can't enforce a view ordinance, but I know it exists, and if it exists, maybe it can be a tool that we can use. And that cottonwood makes a snowstorm. I can't even sit on my deck some days because it's snowing so bad.
And then it gets into the living room, you go to vacuum it, and it just goes. I will talk to Nick about new ordinances and
Okay.
maybe put together some factoid for us at some point.
There's not that many trees like on that alley, for instance, when the leaves just fall on, you look at it, there's not that many trees. I mean, otherwise it's totally full. I mean, your view is gone, your guys' view is really gone compared to what I'm sure it was when you moved in. And it just, and we're paying taxes on view property, so.
In answer to your question, we have some money in the budget for hazardous trees. And those are trees, of course, where they block the view from a stop sign, for instance, and you can't have good sight lines. So we do have a small budget for that.
What about allergies and litter?
I swear that cottonwood is leaning. I think it's a hazard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Change of subject again, or huh? Do you have a? No? Okay. Anybody think of anything?
One of my questions to Nick was, how big are these condos that are not selling? What's the square footage on those?
A couple of 1,800 square footers out at Manchester. I think there's a couple of 1,800 square footers out at Manchester in that development or that condo development that was done there.
Nick, are they overpriced?
That is, that's an opinion call there, Are they overpriced for me? Yep. Are they overpriced for the market? Yep. Are they overpriced in reality? I don't know. And then it wasn't too long ago, within the last 6 months, I believe, that one of the penthouses was still available in the Harborside. And I don't know how big they are.
I guess I just wanted, to me, 600 square feet is a 20 by 30. That's not a very big space to be living in.
I know an individual that's living in his house, I believe he said was 420 square feet, and he wants something smaller.
I know, I read Sunset.
Doesn't have a girlfriend, does he?
I just can't, I can see them as a
friend.
starter unit, but I can't see it for a starter.
Uniform building code, the smallest you can have a house, or living unit is 220 square feet. So 600 is huge.
But if you can have downtown apartments that are 600 square feet, for instance, and not requiring a lot of cars and parking, you know, they could shop downtown, they could hop the little ferry to Bremerton.
As long as they're home by 7.
That's another project.
What will their water bill be?
It all ties together, doesn't it?
That is another thing. It seems like everything is, it's Jerry's line. That's why I had to laugh when she asked you. All the discussion is about making everything pedestrian friendly. They want people walking. I've heard developers say they shouldn't need to have parking requirements because people aren't going to need cars. You're seeing it in Seattle. This is the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
We're sitting here looking at the Olympic Mountains. How long is it going to be before somebody says, I want to go for a hike? You don't have a car. Kitsap Transit isn't going to get you there. There's too much that we rely on to feel like Northwesterners to be without a form of transportation that can get you 60 or 70 miles and home. Electrics ain't going to do it, because once you get up to Staircase or the trailhead for Mount Constance or something like that, there's no place to plug that thing in so you can get home.
How
So-
about this? I don't know if you've noticed, but if everybody's walking, why is it they had to put in a second Tacoma Narrows Bridge?
Good point.
It's just too nice here, that's why.
The people in Mallard are very upset because they got to build those apartments, 400 square foot apartments. Those people do have vehicles, and now they're taking up all the street place parking that the other people that were living there, you know, and had the cars, are having might be walking 3 and 4 blocks to get to their house with their groceries because they can't find anything in front of their place anymore because those apartments are using them. And until we in the Northwest can have some of the same transportation systems that they have on the East Coast, we don't have the trains and the bus service or even the ferry service that you can count on. You have to have a car. I mean, most people are not going to be home, especially if they're young people, drawing them to downtown at 7 o'clock at night. So they don't have a way to get.
Knows about if Kitsap Transit could come up with stuff. I mean, those people probably.
They don't have a connection.
Another aspect of transportation is people have to get to medical appointments. You know, if you're a veteran and you go through American Lake VA or Seattle VA, it's pretty far from Port Orchard to get there. You got to have a car because you're going through at least 2 counties, and the bus lines don't go cross county very well. You can do it, but it'll take you 3 hours to make a 45-minute trip. And plus, even if you're not a veteran, you get to go to Bremerton for a hospital or to Gig Harbor for a hospital. Anyway, other things to think of.
we're kind of particular in the Northwest because, and that's always been my kind of a complaint with belonging to PSRC, Puget Sound Regional Coordinating Council. We don't look much like them, and they don't look much like us either, by the way. You know, they have Bertha and 520 and all of those big mega projects, and we have none of those kind of projects. And I've always thought we're kind of the small guy in the room, and we have a transportation problem that doesn't look like downtown Seattle. Downtown Seattle does have those buses, and they do run pretty regular, but not in Kitsap County. You can't make it out to the fairgrounds, for instance, ever. You know.
Wasn't King County cutting back on their bus service?
Yeah, so, you know, I mean, it's apples and oranges is what it is. And to lump us all together and say, well, we should all exist this way, it may not work for, it doesn't work for the, you know, Kitsap, as far as I'm concerned.
Spending too much money on studies, not enough on services.
I was wondering, it came up last night about is it the 2020 or 2040 that PSRC has on toll roads, and how many people realize that the road from the Bainbridge Ferry is slated to be a toll road, and what other roads around here are in their report, and they seem to be the driving force behind what everybody has to do because it's in their plan. I mean, I don't know, what are some of the other roads that are supposed to be toll in Kitsap County? If they're going to charge to get from Bainbridge Island to the freeway on that road, what other roads are slated to become toll here?
Now that they have the ability to charge a car a toll, like on the Tacoma Narrow Bridge, without slowing down, without even having a transponder, they can read your license plate. I think you're going to find this is just another revenue source. They're going to toll more places, like on 405, you know, they'll have a section HOV, then there'll be another HOV for the rich people also, depending on how busy the traffic is. I think at some point they're going to probably want to issue speeding tickets based on these too. They have the ability to read your speed as well as your license plate and take a picture of who's driving the car. It'll stand up in court. So that's just the next step, I think. The stoplight cameras and speeding
Waiting
tickets.
in your boots, huh, Gary?
Yeah. Big brother.
That's the master plan, and I can't answer all of the master plan, but the 2040 master plan includes a lot of toll roads and a lot of time tolls. If you're going to go to, you know, to Boeing to work, there's certain hours you're going to pay a lot more than, you're right, yeah. Pardon me?
We use the long freeways here, but they're not going to be free much longer.
In San Francisco, they now have parking meters. In San Francisco, they have parking meters that vary from time of day.
They started doing that in Seattle as of like yesterday. Yeah, the idea is the more need there is for parking, the rate will go up. And with the desire is there'll always be at least 2 spots available on each block, whether it's on both sides of the street or not. But we had a big thing showing the first meters being installed that will have that ability.
And then you have, what is it, Uber car or whatever, they're taking up a whole bunch of parking spots in Seattle, so regular people can't park their cars.
Unticketed. Of course, the city employees don't get ticketed either for wherever they want to park. And city lights.
You know, on a brighter subject though, about parking, a lot of folks have, you know, when I first became mayor about 3.5 years ago, I was beat up on a regular basis because you have to do something about the parking problem downtown. There's actually the executive director of the chamber has been doing a impromptu parking survey, And he was telling me, he hasn't completed it yet, but he was telling me it looks like we have 900 parking places in the downtown area. These are all private parking places as well as street parking and parking up here around the courthouse and that sort of thing. So we don't really have a parking problem. What we have to do is a walking problem. Everybody still wants to park right in front of wherever they want to go. And if they can't do that, they say there's no parking here. But I've really, even some of the festival weekends, I've been able to find parking, but I had to walk 3 blocks, you know. And so hopefully we'll get used to that here, especially during the summer season. Walk a little bit more.
Don't say you have to walk 3 blocks. We want to walk.
I don't think it's a parking problem as much as a vision problem. You might walk more than 3 blocks at Walmart trying to get into the door, but you can see the door. And here you can't see around the corner, so the effect is they're walking forever.
In a mall.
Yeah.
Interesting concept. I heard about developers buying airspace above property. So just suppose the Kitsap Bank parking lot across the street here. Maybe they could deed the airspace above their parking lot to the city. Build 2 levels of parking above their parking lot. I mean, it's not uncommon, I guess, in some of the bigger cities. And I guess Bremerton had a couple of buildings just recently where they were actually building in the airspace above somebody else's property. I don't understand how it works. I wish I was a realtor. I'd have a lot more money.
When you can sell the air, you're doing good.
But, I mean, you can't do anything over someone's property
Right.
without their permission. And basically, you're just buying that permission or acquiring the permission.
Kind of a long-term lease of space above their space. Above
But I
their square
thought
feet.
we didn't have a parking problem, we had a walking problem. Just a thought.
Well, I think there's solutions to, you know, to all of this if we just think outside the box a little bit. And I like, you know, some of the things that you were saying too. As long as we don't go over the limit, the height limit, you know. That was pretty well vetted here a few years ago. And
One of the things that I've been wondering is when the council votes on an issue and then you sign the document, or any mayor signs the document, and it's put into play, does it ever come back so that everybody sees the exact wording of what was signed? Because this year, when the budget took the money from the parks and put it down on the walkway from the theater tax, in all the discussion that I remember, the word recreation was never, ever used. The money was to go to the parks. But when it was signed, it must have been signed that it was for parks and recreation. Or is the word recreation always put in with parks? Because to pull that from the Parks Department and use it on the walkway, even though it's a form of, it's recreation, it bothered me that Carolyn sat there and worked. She wasn't going to agree to anything unless the money went to the parks. Now, here's a way for the council, even though it may take 3 or 4 years for them to get $100,000 from all the movie theaters. It bothers me that it was signed in as parks and recreation when I don't think it was ever discussed as recreation. It was discussed for the parks.
I don't recollect, I don't remember, but what can I check on for you? What?
Before your I've sat here at these meetings and watched her say, I'm not gonna vote for this, and it's for parks, or I'm not gonna go for it. And so they,
I remember saying that also before I was here, that she would defend the use of that park money, yeah.
they would take from her, they get halfway, need more money, and they pull the money out of the parks, and she said, we can't get anything done for the parks because you rob it every year, and I want this guaranteed that these theater taxes would go, to the parks department, and then here, she's gone 1 year, and the money, and, well, basically, the money was robbed from the parks to go to the walkway, and the walkway may be a good thing, and people just love it for years and years. But to me, the idea was that money was to go to develop our parks, and we can't get, none of them seem to be getting a lot of work done because there's never enough money. And here they robbed the $100,000 that's taken, 4 or 5 years to build up to go to the walkway because that's a few people's pet plan right now. And I still don't think it's right that we're displacing people and acquaintance that's part of our community for a walkway. I'm going to keep saying that.
Well, I hope you do keep saying that. I agree with you. I think that's looking in the wrong direction. That's heading in the wrong direction also. But
Tell about you were visiting somebody, and either you were in the boat or visiting somebody there, and I think it was you that told me about how much fun it was just.
Oh, when we were out on our boat years ago, we would sail up, and there'd be people on their decks downtown in those little houses, and they'd wave, and we'd have company from out of town, and what a great little place. Even the other day, we were in the rain. We had a nephew down from Alaska, and he and a friend, and we were driving them around. They were looking at everything, and they both pointed out those cute little houses on the waterfront, and we told them, well, they're in maybe torn down for a walkway, and they couldn't get over it. They said, where else do you see that? They're from Alaska. They see a lot of things, but they thought that was just charming. Yeah. Well, I don't know when we're stopping this, but I'd like to thank you for hosting these town hall meetings. And I appreciate that you do come and spend your time and listen to us in such an informal manner where we don't have to watch a light while we talk. But thank you very much.
Town, but I didn't think we were this small.
I went in the sunshine.
Yeah, and feel that we're heard.
And I didn't advertise as well as I should have, but thank you for being here because, no, I truly enjoy this interaction more than any other interaction, especially the red light interaction. I don't like that. Never have cared for it. I know we have to at some time keep things moving along, especially if there's one of these. It was good enough for the goose, ought to be good enough for the gander, isn't it? Be? Everybody ought to be limited to 3 minutes, huh? I would be willing to limit myself to the same 3 minutes on any subject. Yeah. So, well, I would stay here. Yeah, I would stay here as long as anybody would want to. And I'm going to have another and another. And somebody said, well, sometimes not very many people show up. And I said, yes, but sometimes they do. So that's why you keep having them. And I really enjoyed a lot of the comments. I'm going to try to look up some of these items and get back to you. And I would like to see maybe at some point if we couldn't get somebody from West Sound to come to one of these and talk. And I asked Commissioner Garrido, South Kitsap Commissioner. She thanked me, and she did come to one of these actually last year. She thanked me, but she couldn't tonight, but she said she'll come to the next one. I asked for South Kitsap Superintendent Reed. She also had something to do tonight, but she said she'd come to the next one. So I'm hoping to have some folks like that. You as chaplain, I wanted you to be here, and you didn't get any hardball chaplain questions. So, you know, if anybody has one, we could always throw one at her right now.
Something would be nice to hear your background and what you do. And
Well, maybe, could we give her 3 minutes, 5 minutes? Let me get the red light going. Get the light on.
Well, my background is I was in the Army for a real long time, and I was a chaplain the last 13 years I was in. I branch transferred to a chaplain, and I really enjoyed that, and I retired in this area because my folks were in this area, and my brothers. And it came to my attention that the police department was having to use fire chaplains whenever they needed a chaplain. And the person who talked to me knew that I had a background as a chaplain. And so they don't have a budget for a chaplain, so I said, I'll volunteer. And so I volunteer, and I love working with the police department. I love working with the city. It's rewarding to me because I get to meet people all the time. Of course, all of the officers, I get to know them on a personal level, but also citizens. When I'm doing things like tonight, I'm here, and I get to meet all of you and hear your questions and your things that are interesting. So anyway, there's a little bit of my background.
Yeah, Gail was also the state chaplain for the American Legion of Washington State. So, yeah. For a couple of years. Somebody else is doing that. Yeah, but no, that's a big job too.
And Gail, you were a captain? Captain?
I retired as a major.
Captain, or retired as a major, so, yeah. So, very good. Thank you for your service, both in and out of the service.
One of my pet peeves. You made me think of it. I've come and talked, and it's gone through the committee that Mr. called. Having a senior moment here. I'm trying to think of the group, but it's it's not parks, it's the public property. Public property. And anyway, sometimes I feel that sometimes we're going to draw this line in the sand, and you leave reasoning behind because you've drawn the line. And my trees are one of those things that I feel that there's that line in the sand. And I can understand when stop signs and caution signs and things like that are at issue. But we're using a person to trim trees on the street that for signs that 4-hour parking sign and no parking during snow. Well, when there's snow, there's no leaves on those trees. So my trees are butchered for 4-hour parking on a street that goes from Sydney up to Seattle. The only entrance is down the alley from our back driveway for it's the 700, 800, is it the 700, 800, 900, and 1,000 blocks? So it's a 4-block, or at least on the numbering, between Sydney and Seattle.
Yeah, 8s and 9s.
Okay, so it goes. 934 is that corner. Is that the, okay, anyway, but there's only one place to get on. It's at Sydney and Kitsap, or Seattle and Kitsap, really. And yet, there are numerous signs, and there may be laws on how often they have to, and I was gonna go and try to measure between the signs, but it bothers me that we're paying an employee to probably spend an hour and a half to trim trees for signs that say no parking during snow. and 4-hour parking, when people have seen that signs every so far, but that line was drawn in the sand that we're not going to cater to people and their requests. And I think it's personal, but. Well, it's just the idea that last summer he was down there, and I was working in the backyard and I didn't put together, and I kept hearing this sign, and finally I walked to the front and there were my trees being butchered again. And the whole point is it should be, when you guys complain about not having enough employees and you're willing to spend that amount of time for don't park during snow and 4-hour parking when there are other important places for that employee to be. And I think it's because the line.
Thank you, thank you. The alley that goes from Sydney to Seattle between Kitsap and DeKalb gets so overgrown, it really scratches cars, and I know people will go out there and trim, but then it gets to a point where, you know, you can only use one side of the alley. It just gets overgrown. Well, years ago. Years ago, yeah, and now. But anyway, it's just, yeah. So we like it when the garbage trucks go down. We say, oh, please break that, you know, push those bushes back or something, so they won't be scratching the cars as we go by.
A big problem.
Yeah.
Well, once again, I appreciate everyone, you know, and we'll keep having town hall meetings and try to get some special guests that might put some new ideas to work with us. I would like to see, I bet you money I can get Michael Wilson to come and talk to us a little bit the next time about the ULID that they're talking about out there. It would be only fair to give him an opportunity to tell his side of it. And, you know, and Charlotte Garrido will be here. She was sorry. In fact, she had fun the one time she did show up. And nobody really hit her with anything that she couldn't handle. So she said, believe me, I'll come when I can. So, and then I'll advertise those 3 or 4 different folks, you know. You know, I don't know if we're ever going to have a rainy day anymore. I mean, you looked at today. Well, you looked at today, and it was 90 or 70 degrees anyway, 80 or 70 or yeah. So unbelievable. Maybe there won't ever be any more rain here. Good question. No, we'll try to have a cloudy day. So, and I think it's July. If I'm not mistaken, the next one's in July. So, and usually we have a cloudy day or two in July. So, but anyway, thank you very much. Please go and have a chocolate chip cookie. My wife made those and said, don't bring them home. And I'm not going to bring them home. So if we don't eat them today, you have to come tomorrow downstairs to the office and have some. So, yes, please.
It just came from the Eagles, and there was a fundraiser for the Fisher House, and the mayor here donated a walking stick that got $80 for the Fisher House. And it was $650 that went towards the donation, so it was a very, very good bunch of people giving a lot of money, and this is what I think really makes this town great. And thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.